Hi, boys and girls. So we are back for another science unit, and this unit is going to go off of what we just did last week. Last week, we had a ton of fun being engineers. Remember, engineers are people who think and solve problems, like figuring out ways for us to get from one place to another, like building bridges, and figuring out how to make things easier for us on an everyday basis, like creating objects that we need to cook or we need to clean or we need to just be able to live and do the things that we do. So engineers are those people who come up with those ideas. My favorite way to explain an engineer is actually by thinking about Disney World. And when you guys go, if any of you have been to Disney World, you know it's such a magical place and it's so beautiful, and the rides have so many details. Everything is thought of, planned out, drawn out, created. They do test runs, they do everything. Those engineers are actually called Imagineers because they imagine things and they bring those things to life. So that is what I like to think of when I think of an engineer. An engineer is someone who comes up with a fantastic idea and brings it to life. So last week I presented you with a bunch of challenges so that you guys could get a hang of basically becoming engineers, because even though we're curious about things and we ask a lot of questions and we want to figure things out, it doesn't necessarily make us engineers, but it's fun to pretend to be. So this week we are going to be engineers again. We are going to be scientists again. But this time, instead of just presenting you with a challenge, I'm going to base the activities that you're doing on stories that I'm sure most of you know. They're going to be fairy tales. They're going to be fables. They're going to be stories that you've heard rhymes and songs and poems. We all know fairy tales. They all start with once upon a time, they end and they all lived happily ever after. There's usually some form of good and some form of bad, and basically good always wins. And they involve love and they involve different characters, and they're always just so nice and wonderful. And a lot of times those fairy tales are actually made into movies, so we get to see them brought to life. Fables are very similar to fairy tales, except they teach a lesson. They have a moral to them, and a moral is something that we learn. For example, my favorite story, A Bad Case of Stripes, it teaches us that we should always be ourselves. And no matter what, remember Camilla Cream, when she wasn't herself, when she did not want to eat her lima beans, what happened to her? That's right, she became covered in stripes. And the minute she ate those lima beans, what happened to her stripes? They went away and she turned back to normal. So it taught us a moral. It told us a story. It told us the correct way to believe in ourselves and to really not be afraid of what other people think. Well, that is what fables do. Fables are stories that are passed down that teach us a story. They usually involve some sort of animals that usually have characteristics, which means they have different things that make them, even though they're animals, it almost makes them human-like, like us. They do different things that make us think that they're real people or they are real just characters in a story. Instead of being like a tortoise and a hare, you would think of them as two people that are racing, and one's just really fast and one's really slow. Or instead of it being three pigs and a big bad wolf, you think of it as three brothers who are building homes, and a big bad wolf, who just is a really bad guy, comes down and tries to not only blow their houses down, but tries to eat them. So fairy tales and fables, we all know them. They're all around us. I'm sure Miss Karen has read a bunch of them to you. I'm sure I've read even a couple of them to you. So this week's unit, what we are going to do is I am going to read you guys a story, either a fairy tale or a fable or a poem. And that story is going to have an activity connected to it, which means you have to watch the story and then you have to watch the video where I explain the activity, the experiment, or the challenge. Because whatever the activity or challenge is, it is going to be a direct answer to what you guys just read. So I'm going to make a question. I'm going to ask you if you can come up with a great idea, if you can come up with something different in order to change maybe the outcome of the story, maybe to help the character in the story be able to do something, or just to build and imagine. Like when we're talking about the Three Little Pigs, I bet you know what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to build, and I'm going to ask you to use those brains and those, your imagination and your creativity and everything that we just practiced when we were engineers. So I hope you're ready. I hope you're ready to listen to some great stories. These stories can usually also be found on YouTube as cartoon versions. So if you have trouble following along, or you're a little confused, or maybe you're really into the story and you want to see more, try looking on YouTube and see if you can get a cartoon version of it. Because sometimes I'm a visual learner, which means I like to see things in front of me. I can hear people talk and I get it and I'm following along, but when I see something, I get it so much better. So again, if there is a part where, when I'm reading the story, I'm going to show you the pictures, I'm going to make sure you guys can see everything. But if you need to, don't be afraid to look on YouTube and see if you can get a moving story or a short clip of the book. So we're going to get started. I'm going to present your first story, and that activity will follow. We're going to be going through quite a few of them, so however you want to space them out, however you want to do this, you guys, it's completely up to you. You are the engineers, the Imagineers, the scientists, the creators, the thinkers, the everything. So I really hope you enjoy this unit. I really hope you are ready to be as creative as possible. And as always, I cannot wait to see what you guys come up with, because some of you sent me some amazing things that you guys built and created when we did the engineering unit. I saw zip lines, and I saw parachutes, and I saw all kinds of just things that blew my mind. I saw bridges, and I saw monsters. Some of your monsters were absolutely amazing. So don't be afraid to go as crazy as you want with these projects. The bigger the better, because you'll have more fun. The more effort you put into it, the more proud you're going to be of what you accomplished, of what you were able to do with those imaginations and with your just overall how smart and how capable you are of doing anything you put your minds to. So good luck, have fun, and as always, reach out if you have any questions or if you need any materials. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes with our first story. All right. Bye.